I talked about having a conversation or a meeting before someone comes into the business. That one of the things that I've always found a little frustrating is that the things that happen in families are incredibly predictable. You know, people will partner. They will often have children. Those children will grow up. They will partner. They may or may not come into the business. Their partner may or may not come in. But very few people talk about that in advance. So again, really important to have significant meetings at significant points of change. And much as Australian farmers, and I'm sure it's no different there, hate spending money, meetings at those significant points of change, I believe, are best facilitated by someone from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So, when someone's thinking of returning into the business, the next likely significant point of change is when someone marries or takes a permanent partner. If the conversations happen before the damage is done, then you've got so much better chance of it working well.
Mm-hmm.
Just by asking, what are people's expectations? If I'm a daughter-in-law, I can remember, again, from I don't want to bore you to death with my own stuff, but when my first grandchild was on the way, because of the work that I do, I can remember saying to my son and daughter-in-law, it would be good if you told me what you're expecting from me as a grandmother. And as sons do, my son said, well, we don't want you up here poking around, putting your nose in everything every day. So which is exactly what I would have done, because when I had my first child, I had no one.
Uh-huh.
So to me, having someone to come and give you a hand and, make the bed and peg the washing out or rock the baby would have been an absolute godsend. So that's what we tend to do, what we think is best.
Yeah.
So,
based on your own experience as well. And that's really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So interestingly, when they were having their second child, my daughter-in-law and I were having a laugh about it. And she said, now, I just want to make it really clear before this baby's born, you are welcome here every day, twice a day, 3 times a day if you'd like to come.
Amazing. Yeah.
What could have become a real bone of contention actually became a bit of a joke.
Yeah. So I imagine though, Lynn, it's got you. That is where this effective communication comes in, because if you didn't get the tone of voice right on that question, it would be good if you could explain to me what your expectations are. That could come across, couldn't it, as so confrontational. So it is this. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than just the words that you use, isn't there?
And there's a lot to understand expectations. That we all have expectations that we know we've got and that we have communicated about. That's the level where we're unlikely to get into trouble, which was me asking what were their expectations. There's a level below that where I know my expectations, but I haven't told anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember saying to one of my daughters-in-law, when I went to use her iron, the cover was still on the ironing board. And I said, don't you iron his shirts?
Uh-oh.
She said, no, and he doesn't iron mine either.
Yeah, there you go. That was a quick.
So that was an expectation that I had. Obviously, I don't think I knew I had it, but I hadn't communicated it.
Yeah.
And then there's a third level of expectation. We have expectations that we don't even know about. So therefore, we haven't been able to express them. So one of the things that I commonly hear is that the younger generation have no respect. So they are expecting to be shown respect. But the young people don't know what that looks like, because no one's ever told them. I can remember people, when they would introduce me to their kids as Mrs. Sykes, I would always say, my name's Lynn. And they'd say, no, that's disrespectful. I'd say, well, actually, I think it's respectful to call me what I've asked to be called.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not only, it's in any conversation where it's good if you clarify the rules. As a result of that, when I introduced my kids, I always said, what would you like them to call you?
Yeah.
And most people actually said their first name.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God, there's nothing worse than being called Mrs. Hughes. Yeah, I can't.
When people call me Mrs. Sykes, I say my mother-in-law has died.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the outgoing generation, is that the right thing to call them?
What did you say?
The outgoing generation. Is that right? No.
Well, often they don't think they're going anywhere. So
yeah, true. That's why I said it. Yeah. It sounds like they're going in a box.
It's risky. You know, that it is so easy to offend. Which is why the earlier the conversation is made normal, you know, where if you talk to your little kids, do you think you'll be a farmer? You know, do you like cattle? If you had to tend this animal, what would you do? Just easy conversation about little simple things.
Yeah.
Is in order to do that, you need to have good basic communication skills to start with. And there needs to be good skills. If it's a couple, if the older generation is a couple, they need to have good communication skills between each other.
Yeah.
That's not always the case.
No, absolutely. So if you could sum up, like, worst case scenario, everything's going wrong, how might the younger generation be feeling, and how might the older generation be feeling? Like, what are the typical things that you come across when you've been doing work with families in terms of how the differences in generations?
Right. So when you talk about feelings, that to me means sad, angry, scared, happy. 4 feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
The simpler you can make things, the easier it is to understand. So they're the 4 feelings. My experience has been both generations are fearful. The older generation is often sad, and they're often both angry with each other, usually.
Yeah.
Because people spend so much time looking outward and so little time looking inward, they spend their time, you know, in this conversation, I spend my time thinking about all the things you're doing wrong and all the mistakes you're making, and you think about the same about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So neither of us, I'm never going to change you. You're never going to change me. The only person I can change is me. So both generations need to be more reflective.
Yeah.
The difficulty is if you've had a troubled relationship in your childhood or your youth with one of your parents, that needs to be sorted before you move to the next stage. You don't need to be bringing baggage, because one of the things that I commonly see is that the older generation will start to speak critically, and the younger generation, who may well be a university graduate, starts communicating like a gullible child because they slip back into that established pattern that they're stuck in from their childhood. Yeah. Parents get stuck in the critical, the kids get stuck in the vulnerable.
Yeah.
So, you know, it astounds me that frequently people will bring 2 children into the business who've never gotten on. Like, why would you do that?
I think people just think it's their right, isn't it, to come back into the business if they want to, and the relationship side of things just is never thought about, is it? It's just never thought about. It's like, just, well, it doesn't matter if we don't get on, just get on with working. But it rears its head, doesn't it, in every single day. And, you know, the misery that it causes that I've seen in families is just horrendous. But it's you're right, it is. I mean, everything, it just comes back to the ability to communicate, doesn't it? Let's be honest, everything comes back to the ability to communicate.